Now let's take a look at the basics of the 3D view window. Now this is the window that you're going to be using the most in Blender. Now the 3D view window is really this area of the screen. You can see here at the bottom right corner we have this icon here. It says 3D view, and then that goes all the way diagonally up to this corner here. 3D view window is our 3D viewport. It's where we can rotate, we can zoom, and so on. But let's take a look at what surrounds this before we get into actual navigation. So if you'll notice here, we've got a panel that's on the left side of this window. And this is called the Object Tools panel. Now this allows us to translate, rotate, scale objects as well as do some additional tools. Now this window will change a little bit depending upon what object you have selected. So if we go over here to the outliner and I select a chair, you'll see that we have one set of tools. If I select the camera, you'll see that these tools change just a little bit. As with all panels, this Object Tools panel can be scaled. So I can scale it to the right, or if I push it all the way to the left, I can make it disappear. Now when I make it disappear, you'll notice a little plus sign shows up here, and if I click on that, it allows me to get that Object Tools panel. Now if we go over to the right side, you'll see we have another plus sign, and under this is what's called the Properties panel. And this allows us to do things such as transforms and change the camera view and so on. And just as with the Object Tools panel, I can scale this, and I can make it disappear just by dragging it to the right. Now along the bottom, we actually have a menu and some additional buttons. And we're going to go through a lot of these buttons, but let's start with this one here. And this is our viewport shading button. And this tells us how we're actually shading this particular 3D view. So let's go from the bottom to the top. If I select bounding box, it turns everything into boxes. And this really just shows you a very rough approximation of where things are in the scene. But it will render very fast. So if you have a very complex scene, this can actually help you scrub in real time. A little more detail, we go up to wireframe, and this gives us the wireframe version of the scene. Then we have the solid view of the scene, which is basically just solid shading, so we can actually see the objects as they're shaded. And then if we have textures on our objects, we'll see a textured view. And this will actually put the photographic textures that we have applied into the scene. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this back on solid. And let's take a look at some of these other menus here. Now this one here, we have a context-sensitive menu called the Object menu. And this can change to the Edit menu or other menus just depending upon what mode we're in. And we'll get to that in a little bit. We have a Select menu, which allows us to select objects. And most importantly, we have a View menu. Because this is a 3D view, this allows us all sorts of control about how we view the scene. So the first one I want to do is one here at the top, and it's called Toggle Full Screen. Now if you notice here, to the right of all of these, we have a hotkey. And in this case, Toggle Full Screen has the hotkey of Control Up Arrow. So if I toggle it from here, you can see my 3D view goes to full screen. All the other panels disappear. If I hit Control Up Arrow again, it comes back. So this is really just a toggle. So Control Up Arrow to make it big, Control Up Arrow to shrink it back down again. Now another one that's another toggle is called Toggle Quad View. And the hotkey for this is Control Alt Q. So when I toggle Quad View, it actually brings up 4 viewports in this one 3D view. So in the top right, we have a perspective view. Then we have orthographic or drafting views. So we have a top, front, and right view. Now this can be very helpful when you're modeling and you need to get very precise views of your scene. Now again, this is a true toggle. So if I hit Control Alt Q, it will bring it back. Now notice how it brought me back to a different viewport than I went in as. So if I use Control Alt Q to toggle back to my quad view, let me show you a little trick here. When it toggles back to a full view, it's going to toggle back to wherever the mouse is located. So if my mouse is over the perspective window, it toggles to perspective. If I'm over the top orthographic window, it will toggle to top orthographic. So just be aware of that as you go back and forth between these. Your mouse position is important. So these are some of the basics of the 3D view window. Now remember, you can resize the panels on either side of the screen and also change the shading. We're going to get into navigation in the next lesson.